You're listening to Data Science Leaders, the premier podcast for executives tackling the world's most important challenges using the power of machine learning. Let's dive in. What capabilities do you need to take advantage of AI, and what changes do you need to make to your IT architecture? Well, let's look at some data. Today, we are joined by Sean Rogers, who will be sharing survey data on exactly this topic. Sean is the CEO and fellow at BARC US and covers data, BI, analytics, machine learning, AI, and cloud technologies. Sean, thank you very much for joining us.
Shell, it's great to be here and a lot of fun to bring your opinion and my opinion to a really fun topic and to back it up with a little bit of really solid research data. And that's what you and I are going to cover today is this recent piece of research that my company did in collaboration with Merv Adrian of IT Market Strategy. And we were looking at optimizing your architecture for AI innovation and kind of exploring how companies are preparing themselves or trying to catch up in what is probably one of the most disruptive technology races that you and I have seen, perhaps even in our careers. We talked to companies of all sizes. This was a global piece of research. So we had 335 respondents take the survey, and all of the people were pre-qualified, that they had an understanding of the strategy that their company was bringing to what's a very important topic, AI innovation. And I think, Shell, you probably agree with me as we get a little deeper into the challenges and how people are approaching it, that this is likely one of the most interesting things that we've all seen in a very long time, perhaps since maybe the craze that was around the big data world and Hadoop might be the last time. I've had peers in the industry that have said, well, no, this is even more disruptive than that type of technology. And frankly, it's causing a whole level of FOMO. The research shows that, the train really hasn't left the station. I know it feels like it has. You can't open a journal or a website or anything right now without being hit squarely with new articles and new content about AI and Gen AI in general. But I wanted to make the point of, hey, take a deep breath, keep calm, carry on, as they like to say. If you rush into AI and the disruptiveness that it brings, you're likely to make mistakes quicker. So I know a lot of folks listening in are wondering where they are in the maturity arc. We're going to talk about that in a second. But like I said, I want to make sure that you understand that the train hasn't left. You haven't missed out on anything. But I'm also aware of the fact that many of you are getting a lot of pressure from your board of directors or shareholders or just your teams in general. What are we doing with AI, and are we keeping pace with that innovation? So I get it, but really, stay calm, relax. This is the beginning of your journey. Our research shows that most of you will rely on trusted partners for the journey in order to de-risk your strategy and get to the end game quicker. If you haven't thought about how you're going to go about doing that, that is the track that most of your peers are taking. And I know that not just from my opinion, but from the data. And if you go back to how I started this conversation today, it was about optimizing your architecture and optimizing your culture. And when people stand back and start looking at, well, here are the things that we might want to add into our environment. We're optimizing our compute hardware, or we're looking at model ops, or we need a centralized feature store to do better analytics. We're adding extra cloud services. These are all very relevant technology decisions. And what I wanted you to see here is that the high-readiness group is quite clearly testing the pool on all of these things. Now, that doesn't mean that I can prove to you that they've been more successful. What it means is they're out ahead of most of us. They're trying these things quicker, and they've already crossed these bridges and been able to decide, hey, is a vector database critical to our strategy? Is optimizing our hardware critical to our strategy? And they're making those decisions. So what I would like for you to take away is there's a lot of different decisions you can make around technology to augment yourself and to prepare for AI and Gen AI in general. the leaders of the pack, this high readiness cohort, they've tried all of these things and they're doing it quickly. My takeaway is the high readiness cohort looked faster and quicker, and now they're out there doing things with these technologies. We, the rest of us, the 80%, are standing back and thinking about how we want to prioritize this list. And compute hardware, model ops, and management and monitoring of models, those things are leading the pack for the general cohort, as well as centralized feature stores. So these are things the rest of us are addressing first and from a primary strategic standpoint. So, you have this rush to be part of AI. And I hope that I was clear that, hey, don't worry. Things haven't moved as far forward as you think they have. About 80% of us are in the same kind of boat. And there's only a small percentage that are ahead. And that percentage that's ahead is trying just about everything from a technology standpoint to figure out what they can augment their architecture with and what decisions will help them move their AI practices forward. There are definitely obstacles that are slowing everybody down. And once again, the obstacles are quite varied. The biggest one, of course, is lack of AI skills and expertise. And some of you may remember this type of skill gap issue from the days of big data and Hadoop. And as data science found its way more primarily into our enterprise. When that happened, everybody was looking for a data scientist. Now everybody is looking to fill the skill gap on this particular technology. I often give advice if you're looking to get ahead in your career. I used to say this during the days of big data and data science when it was very popular. And the recommendation was put the word data science in your LinkedIn profile. The same holds true for AI today. If you know AI or prompt engineering, I would get it out there. It's kind of interesting when you look at the second big obstacle, which is cost. And so the entire cohort came in and listed that as the second highest. And honestly, I think it's one of the obstacles that many people and many companies are missing today. This is really exciting stuff. But once you get an AI professional or the number of them that you need in your organization, you will run into the cost obstacle rather quickly. And so don't ignore cost as you start on this journey. It's really important. I had a conversation earlier today with a fellow analyst, and we were kind of laughing about this idea of how big large language models are and where all that data came from to inform the model and to train the model. Most of us, if not all of us in the enterprise, we don't have that kind of data resource or the financial resources to build our own. So you're likely going to need to find ways to get your hands on the right models, whether they're small, medium, or large. And by the way, I'll make the point early on today, you will not have just one model in your environment. But I do think that the obstacle issue is really interesting, and it's important to think about. Data plays a key role in the obstacles that we're looking at. You need a ton of data to infuse and augment these models, to make them smarter, make them more performant, and to make them behave in a way that mirrors your business. But be prepared. Be prepared for this obstacle. The lack of AI skills and expertise is a big deal, and you're going to need to solve it. And that brings me to the point, Michelle, I'm going to bring you in on the conversation. The high readiness guys, 45% of them were listing high costs and budget limitations as an issue. And I know from our research that 37% of board of directors are actually implementing additional funding to keep pace with AI innovation. So money's coming from the top in 37% of the cases. And that special cohort, those high readiness companies, they identified cost as an issue really early on. So the big question becomes, what do you do? What's the strategy? How do you overcome this big obstacle? And the number one thing that we're seeing is upskilling. Shell, I want to get your opinion. I just highlighted 68% of the companies that were in the survey said, hey, we're going to address the skill gap in the following ways. And the number one piece is upskilling and reskilling existing workforces. I think that's pretty smart. What's your opinion on it?
Yes. I mean, it certainly is recognizing the reality that if they were to try and go out and hire these people, they don't exist. It's a little bit like when you were talking about the big data Hadoop revolution wave,
Yeah.
where, you would have folks in 2012 asking for Hadoop programmers with 5 years of experience. And obviously Hadoop didn't exist for 5 years at that time. And we're in that realm today. Arguably, yes, some of this has been around for a while. I mean, transformer networks started showing up in like 2017. So there has been some runway here. There are some folks out there who remember BERT models and we're doing natural language processing with them. But for the most part, there's a recognition that there aren't many of these folks around who've had any official formal training on leveraging these, let alone folks who've had direct hands-on experience, combined with the fact that, well, everybody else is trying to get hold of them as well. I guess the thing that surprised me when I looked at this was looking at things like strategic outsourcing and centers of excellence. I mean, a lot of folks, and I think you've hinted at this, we're sort of approaching Gen AI as if this was like another magic button. It's, oh, great. So I don't need to actually have any capabilities. Here I can just go and rely on a provider of an LLM and they're going to host the model for me. I don't need to train it. I don't need to hire data scientists to go in and develop it. I don't need to go in and get my own training data. It's all going to work automatically.
I think there's a couple of things going on. I think you don't know what you don't know. And when these bright, shiny toys of technology show up, we all get very distracted by them. And it's hard to keep our eyes on the really important parts of how do I execute and how do I execute around skills. But what you're talking about is even broader. Do I have my data in order enough to be able to augment and help influence the models we're working with? Do we have policies in place? I think we're in the infancy of this particular disruption, which is why I chose to lead off with that big red sign. Take a deep breath and relax. There's a lot of work to be done here, and it's not simple work. As an analyst, and Shell, you and I share that in our backgrounds. One of the things that you and I have gotten to do in our business lives is we're paid to research and read and educate ourselves. It's not the case with everybody who's out there working in the enterprise. They don't get to come into work today and spend 3 hours reading the latest white paper or position piece on a particular AI technology. So they're learning it ad hoc, and they're assuming often that this is an easier journey than it really is. I'm fearful that later on this year as an analyst, I'm going to have to write an article about a company who really messed up. And they're either going to mess up by spending a ton of money and not getting any ROI, or they're going to put some systems in place. It's not going to be as well thought out as it needs to be, and critical errors that are public are going to take place. And that's going to be difficult. The other side of this that I found interesting is when you look at upskilling and internal knowledge sharing, I do think it addresses one of those big questions of, is AI going to eat my job? And I do think that AI will replace some tactical things in our lives, make our lives better in general, and it will affect some jobs. But basically, when you look at this, big enterprises from all over the world are talking about, hey, we're going to collaborate, we're going to share, we're going to upskill and retrain, and that's where this is going to start. Hiring and talent acquisition came down a little lower, and outsourcing as well. So I think it's a complex discussion about how do we get to the real end game. But I find that most of the people I'm speaking to in the user community are still trying to wrap their heads around it. And I would imagine as a vendor and a solution provider in this space, when you're helping your customers, some of that foundational stuff must be happening.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I really liked where you were talking about this range of different capabilities that organizations are looking to implement, especially the high readiness ones, whether it comes to, as you said, the optimized compute hardware, model deployment capabilities, knowledge graphs, vector stores, feature stores, etc. there's this element whereby you need quite a lot of capabilities in order to be able to field these, because at the end of the day, they're applications and it's not a single model. It almost never is a single model. It is often a variety of different, often a complex pipeline of data engineering steps, embedding models, often a vector store in there, often upstream predictive models, downstream generative AI models, and obviously guardrails and end user applications that these things are embedded in. And so there's this need to go in and build up this range of capabilities for developing and operationalizing a generative AI application. And I guess that's what we see on our more sophisticated customers. I mean, we're in the very fortunate position of working with a lot of folks who are in that high readiness category. I mean, yeah, it's like don't worry about the FOMO unless you're in biopharma. If you're in biopharma, worry about it, because every single one of them that I'm talking to has not only been leveraging models for drug discovery. Usually it is a protein or a peptide, are particularly popular for leveraging a generative AI model to go in and do things like predict to the likelihood of it responding to a target molecule or creating an immune response or things along those lines. And in those cases, it's what you're saying. These are folks who've been building that groundwork for a really long time. These are folks who have been starting on this journey before ChatGPT ever hit the headlines. So, yeah.
Well, they're the pioneer shell of traditional AI, right? They were doing anomaly detection and risk management with machine learning before the bright, shiny toy of Gen AI showed up, right?
Yes, they absolutely. There is a bit of potentially worrying narrative around the rich getting richer. The organizations which have already invested in this are the ones which are being able to take advantage of this. And I guess what really worries me, and this is as a person who is surrounded by all of these Gen AI success stories that have gone into production and things, is that we're going to be writing the headline in 6 months time to a year's time of 90% of Gen AI projects failing, not because there's anything wrong with the technology, but because folks just had completely unrealistic expectations around what it took in order to be able to unlock that value. I'm hoping we can try and shortcut that we don't end up with a set of AI haves and have-nots, the haves being the ones who were already far along enough, they had already seen the success stories and the continued investing, and the have-nots being the ones where they were running headlong into this, really, really excited about it, weren't at a level of maturity to take advantage of it, and got disillusioned and didn't see the return on the initial investment. And lo and behold, we're averse to this and are only going to come back to this in like 2 years' time and missed out on on everything in between.
It's a big reason I started our conversation today with those 7 critical planning and strategic ideas. Because if you run into this too headlong, too quickly, like I said, you can move failure along a lot faster if you don't have everything in line. So we asked an interesting question of all the participants, and we said, when you're going to do this, when you're ready, and you're looking for support, you're looking for the right resources to enable your AI success, where are you going? And it's interesting because for just about everybody, that, especially those of you that have a board, for instance, this is a board level mandate. This is coming from the top down. And if you don't have a board, it's coming from your leadership. They know that it's critical that we pay attention to this technology. Where the reliance is, 48% of the people that answered this said, hey, internal IT resources are going to play a key role here, followed very closely by existing technology vendors. And what we found is that companies that are doing AI and innovative AI are going to combine forces with both of those top 2 picks. This idea of relying upon IT resources internally and then getting together with existing technology vendors that you trust and have a relationship with. And my position here is, and I guess the data's shell, is that this seems to be the best strategy.
Yes, and I think it ties in a little bit into the upskilling. And I think one of the things that's happening here is the degree to which there's sort of a bifurcation in how Gen AI is being used. Gen AI is different from big data, and it's different from the earlier round of the AI spring, if for lack of a better term, that happened around 2012, in the sense that, and it's much more like the .com era, when in that we're all going to be using these technologies on a daily basis. We're all going to be using generative AI in the same way that we use internet search on a daily basis. It's a technology which is in the hands of end users and going to be used by end users daily in a way that often machine learning applications, big data applications, BI applications, and others, there were even BI applications were still for a fairly rarefied set of users who weren't using this every day. Versus, where we all need access to some assistant to go in and help us with doing better internet search, doing better summarization, text creation, and above all, code creation. And so there's no way in which you can get this into the hands of those end users without going and leveraging your internal IT resources to make that happen and try and provide guardrails around folks going in and accidentally sharing sensitive data, for example. Because folks live and breathe in their regular business applications, you're going to be working with existing technology vendors who are providing those applications that folks are using. So there is that huge component there. I would say there's another element of this, which is, though, those are things that every organization needs to do, right? They're not going to be that differentiated for you versus another company. Then there are the set of Gen AI applications which are specific to your organization. They're keying off of your data. They're going and working with your processes, with augmenting your most expert users in the fields that are critical for your business. For those ones, that's where I don't think the technology vendors are the existing technology vendors are probably not going to help you with that. We've seen how most of them have kind of failed when it came to CRM vendors, for example, going in and embedding predictive analytics in your workflow. There was some in there a little bit. Or when it comes to your ERP vendor or your financial and HR vendors, etc. The applications that you need are going to go far beyond those. But that then keys into your specific business applications that you create, and we're back to the realm of the internal IT resources again, where you're going to need those developer teams. You're going to need folks to go in and create, operationalize, and manage these Gen AI infused applications that you're building. Which can either be a wonderful thing or an exciting thing if you are on the IT side, or it can be a giant headache that you're really worried about. It's good and bad.
I think, I agree. I think the good side about the internal IT resources is it's such an important thing, and it's got such high visibility that it's not being shuffled off to the mid-tier of IT. The strategy and the budgets, as we saw in our research, are being controlled by IT for AI innovation. I think that's very interesting. So they have both sides of the coin. And I think that you'll find your partners or the people directing the AI strategy inside your org very high up in the IT team, which helps give it the power and the freedom to move a little quicker than when we kind of put it in a mid-tier position inside the organization.
Absolutely. There's also an element of maturity around this. It's the work that you're doing, not just on Gen AI, but also machine learning generally, is now so big. There's so many users. It's recognized as so important. There've been enough success stories that IT has to get involved and support this and do this at scale in a way that, your little guerrilla data science teams and others that are around the organization that are, creating things on their own and putting it together with chewing gum and sticky tape. That's just not scalable to the degree that organizations need to. There's just too much waste and reinvention of the wheel and too long time to value there. So IT, I think it's taken a while for it to become that priority. But between the intersection of that maturity as well as the need for accelerator on Gen AI, that call that I think all of us in the analyst community are being hey, CIOs, you need to take the lead on this. Now they both want to and have to.
I absolutely agree. It's both of those reasons. They want to because it's a great opportunity, but they have to. The pressure is is way too much. I also think that this type of tech, and Shell, you might disagree with me here, and I'll be interested for your opinion. I think with other disruptive technologies, this idea of shadow IT, I mean, the first time I saw a Hadoop cluster, it was under someone's desk. I don't think we're going to see as much of that with AI. I think due to its complexity and the data that's required, it almost requires that it doesn't happen that way. What do you think? Are you seeing both sides, or do you agree with my summation on it? And it's okay if you disagree.
It's hard to tell right now. It's one where that cost element is absolutely critical because even if you're leveraging, obviously, the third-party hosted LLMs, they're expensive. But you know what else is really expensive? Going in and hosting it yourself. Versus you could do so much more in the traditional machine learning space without really the costs being huge, right? There were huge personnel costs. The talent was really expensive, but you weren't often talking about a huge amount of data. You weren't talking about extraordinary costs for training a model, and certainly not talking about extraordinary costs for putting that model into production. Here, you're running into that problem from the very get-go. Every call that you're putting to an LLM is expensive. And so needing to figure out those costs, needing a way to scale that, and well, you can't hide that under the rug in quite the same way. The numbers become too large, and you need them in there. There's only if you need to go in and stand up your own open source model hosted on internal infrastructure, you're going to need some pretty beefy infrastructure to go in and do that. And that's not that fun to do on your own if it's not your job. Now, the only thing that holds me back from this is that often IT doesn't know what to do right now. So IT is looking for as much guidance on what does this look like? What does the stack look like? What do these components look like? And so the most successful companies I've seen are ones where they have an extraordinarily strong relationship between IT and the business, and that they are able to work very fluidly around this, because there's a lot of knowledge that is being accumulated, and that has to be accumulated by the folks who are developing and designing these solutions, that if you're not in that role, you're not in a position to get that knowledge. So yeah, that bridging that relationship between IT and the business always was important. It's even more important here.
It sure is. I absolutely agree. I think you and I both feel pretty strongly about wanting to include some insights around responsible AI. I feel like when we get excited about brand new things, some companies, not all, have a tendency to over-innovate a little bit, right? We don't pay attention to the details we need to be paying attention to. So while I know many of you who are listening have heard a lot about governance and compliance and the EU AI Act and NIST guidelines, NIST guidelines here in the States, there's a lot of different things that will compel us to stay on a certain path. But what's really important is that your company, the culture of your company, your enterprise, has been giving some thought to which of the many ideas of responsible AI are critical and important to you. Now, we start off at the top with securing AI systems and models, but I have to admit, I almost felt like that was sort of a knee-jerk reaction, right? It almost has a little bit of fear inside of it. Oh, okay, we're gonna have models and we're gonna have AI systems. We need to make sure we're secure. I feel that over time, maturity is going to show us some different things. And Shell, I'm interested to hear your thinking here. When accuracy and hallucinations, model bias, environmental sustainability, I mean, these things are at the bottom. And I have to admit, I was a little bit stunned. If you're going to automate or rely upon AI to do things or help you do things, but you're ranking accuracy and hallucinations at the bottom of a chart like this, it's a little scary. What's your thinking on this?
Yeah, I think it's what you're saying on both points. And like the top one there around security of AI systems and data privacy, there was panic, like sheer panic, in the last year from folks being like, "Oh my goodness, how do I stop folks in my organization going in and sharing sensitive data with a third-party model run by a startup?" I mean, it's like every data protection officer's nightmare, and then CIO's nightmare. Oh, and by the way, this isn't just a couple of people; this is everybody in my organization because they're all doing it on they're all. It's so instantly available to folks. So I think that's what is explaining what's at top, because this is what folks have been facing. It's just, how do I deal with that? What I think we're seeing at the bottom is just the fact that people haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
People haven't gotten to the challenges of actually building their own Gen AI application for a particular use case and run into that problem of it not behaving consistently or reliably in by anyone's definition of consistently or reliably. Now, what gave me hope here was the fact, though, that this is pretty spread out, that folks are saying, aren't going and over-indexing too much on one or the other of these many things. Because in the literature or in the media right now, you're hearing that, oh, well, we need ethics and fairness, or we're hearing that we need the LLMs to be ethical and fair. And that's a pipe dream. There's no way that a third-party hosted model can go in and ensure that their model is functioning reliably and robustly and accurately for your specific differentiated use cases. They can't. I mean, it's a generalized model. You're going to need to go in and build those guardrails. It's I use the metaphor of flight all the time. It's like, well, why do I trust flying? Why am I willing to go on Spirit Airlines and not worry about and worry about delays, but not worried about that it's going to crash? And it's not because, oh, there's this special like anti-grav device on the plane that is going to prevent it from crashing. It's everything that's gone into it, right? It's the pilot training, it's the stewardesses training, it's the technicians training, it's the air traffic controllers, it's the processes that they're all following. It's the testing that has gone into all of the components of the and the ongoing monitoring and testing of all those components on an ongoing basis. And so I'm worried that the responsible AI discussion has been far too narrowly focused on like individual techniques like explainability or very specific topics like fairness and ethics, which, are important, but they're not everything that's required for safety. There are actually huge numbers of use cases which don't have anything to do with fairness and ethics, but which are very, very important when it comes to safety. So I guess I'm taking a certain amount of comfort that folks aren't over relying and thinking that this is all going to be modal bias. If we solve modal bias, we're going to fix all of this. Unfortunately, this is then tempered by the fact that this is quite consistent with folks still being fairly early on the maturity curve.
I'm convinced, and I don't know if I said it up front, but we surveyed this audience during October. So just a couple of months ago. And I suspect that if I asked the same 335 this question again today, we would start to see that maturity shift a little bit. So it was interesting as a snapshot in time to understand what everybody was thinking about and prioritizing. My advice to everyone who's listening to us today is make sure that responsible AI is part of your overall AI strategy. And I think Shell and I are aligned on this one. Maturity drives the priorities a little bit.
If I can add to that, I guess I would say make sure that it works for you. Make sure that it delivers value for you. There's all of this opportunity to leverage responsible AI to ensure that your models, AI models, machine learning models, are performing better, that they're maintained more regularly, that they are reliable, that they meet the business need more effectively. That is all part of responsible AI as well. But you wouldn't guess that if you were to go to one of the tech giants' websites and you're bombarded with a list of ethical AI principles. It's great. I mean, we all like ethical AI principles, but it's going to take a really, really long time if that's your starting point to get to tangible value in your organization. So versus thinking about how can this be a tool to accelerate trust and adoption of these technologies in my organization? If you approach it from that point of view, I think your opportunity to turn this into something self-sustaining versus something which is a defensive shield that we have to because we're worried about regulatory scrutiny or we're worried about some sort of scandal in newspapers. It's like, well, yes, those can happen, and yes, you do want to protect yourself from them, but that's a small fraction of what the opportunity is here.
I like your comment about self-sustaining. It's not a one-shot deal, and it's not an immediate shield thing. It is got to be part of the culture of your company as you move forward with AI. So I great comment. But Shel, let's wrap up here talking just a little bit about how organizations are going to manage large language models. And there's so many different ways to do it, whether you're, just monitoring and maintaining, if you're focused on, managing prompt engineering, all the way down to the bottom, which surprised me with retrieval augmented generation, or what you folks have heard many times, RAG, which I will tell you from end users is one of the biggest questions I get every day is, what the heck is RAG? But Shel, what's your takeaway on doing things in-house, doing them on third-party platforms, taking a hybrid stance? I mean, when you and I talked about this slide previous, we both kind of laughed a little bit. Man, the numbers are kind of even, aren't they? I mean, it's kind of 30-30-30 at a broad level. What was your thinking on that?
Yes, I mean, if you're going to need all of these, but I think what I really like is that it brings us back to that build versus buy discussion that we always have. And with Gen AI and with everything else, and certainly in the machine learning space, but I think even more broadly, it's never a question of build versus buy. It's a question of build and buy, and potentially also hire. It depends on the use cases that you're going after. When it comes to leveraging third-party hosted, well, of course, there are plenty of use cases that every organizations have where you're going to be able to get something off the shelf. All of your software developers are going to be wanting something which looks a little bit like GitHub Copilot. Why wouldn't they? Anybody who leverages internet search is going to want something which looks a little bit like Perplexity AI, or it's whatever. It varies from day to day, week to week, which of those services is the best one and most successful one. But we're all going to need something like that, and there's no real reason why you should build your own, because it's a very standard use case. That in the same way that you don't really have a customized version of Google for you beyond what a personalization that it does. Why would you go in and build your own for those use cases? However, for most of the core ones to your business, they're going to be leveraging your data, which is unique. They're going to be interacting with your systems that are unique. They're going to be following your processes, which are unique. And presumably, you're going to want to be training them and infusing them with your intellectual property and going and building things that are unique and differentiated to you and will be driving competitive advantage to everyone else. Are you going to be able to get those off the shelf? Well, no. I mean, we can't for any of the other. It's the reason why we have in-house software development teams to begin with. And those are not even the AI ones for AI applications. So, yeah, it's not going to be a build or buy or hire. It's going to be both, and you should be pursuing both. At least that's my take on it. Curious your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I'm very much aligned with the fact, and you mentioned it just a little earlier, it's going to be use case directive. Right? It's what are you doing? Because if you're doing a specific application that benefits from RAG, then that's going to become paramount in importance. And, you might be doing that on a third-party platform. I do think that all too often when things get exciting and disruptive, there's this silly assumption that the new technology is going to replace and mandate a specific direction. But once the dust tends to settle on any new tech, it finds its appropriate homes in the ecosystem. And so the same thing is going to happen with how people are managing large language models. They are going to take the approach that fits the use case, fits the economics of what they're doing, and fits their ecosystem. And so this landscape is going to look different for everybody. There is no one single path. You're all going to find the path to the right solution based on a handful of indicators like cost or your ecosystem and so on. And I think Shel's comment about use cases is pretty critical. So, yeah, fun conversation about the models in general. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least touch on and highlight for all of you how people are immediately right now deploying, POCing, testing, and planning for specific types of Gen AI use cases. So it's no surprise to anyone listening, and certainly not to Shell and I, that chatbots and intelligent assistants are kind of the biggie, because that's kind of the on-ramp. I think it's a simple on-ramp for Gen AI. Shell, did any of the other use cases here stand out as surprising to you, or does it kind of align with some of the cool conversations you're having with your customers?
Well, certainly the rough ranking does. So between the chatbots, the document analysis one, summarization, report generation, research augmentation, absolutely. Hearing any number of our customers on the financial services and insurance, and a couple of the pharma ones going after that one as well. The customer experience enhancement one is one where I hear, again, a huge split. You'll have digitally native organizations going in and doing things like cut 50% of their outsourced call centers by leveraging large language models to handle that chat. It does happen. But then you move to more conservative and traditional industries, and we are really, really far away from that. But I think what this is showing is that so many parts of the organization are in play. We're all hoping that this technology is really going to be a lot more horizontal than anything that we've seen previously, and is going to deliver benefits really everywhere that we're leveraging what's effectively unstructured data. And that's another thing that comes through here. It's leveraging language, machine logs, image, video data that has been pretty opaque to a lot of IT systems and organizations in the past. We haven't just been able to use it and to drive automation and new applications off of this. So wherever that data has existed and been part of those processes, those are target-rich environments for going in and leveraging generative AI to tackle them. It's just still early on, and our capabilities and trust and everything else and change management and good old digital transformation capabilities that we need are not where we want them to be. And so it's going to be a while. Our demand for instant gratification and results that we can see within months and weeks. Yeah, some folks are able to achieve those, but they mysteriously happen to be the ones that were born digitally native and were built around data products and have been leveraging AI and machine learning for years now. Unfortunately.
Well, you kind of put a bow on it for us, didn't you? I started off at the top with, hey, stay calm. The train hasn't left the station. And here we are at use cases at the end of our discussion. And we don't even have a 30% in any of them as deployed to production. It's just starting. And companies are just finding paths to getting involved in it. And I think that that's partially what makes it so exciting and an interesting topic for us to discuss. From my standpoint, I think the biggest recommendation I have for you, and Shell, I'll ask you to add one to this list as well, but relax, take a deep breath. It's going to be a fun journey. It's exciting tech. It really, truly is. And as Shell just said on that last slide, we're going to find it everywhere in the enterprise in a couple of years, not tomorrow. And no one has it everywhere in the enterprise. There are some people in certain industries, and Shell was absolutely right, bio and pharma. I would have added banking and insurance, maybe healthcare. These are the segments that tend to have that high readiness cohort attached to them because the business demands utilization of that tech quicker and faster than some other places. So you're probably doing just fine. And when you download the research today, which I'll give you a link for in a moment, make sure that you look at those top 7 priorities. That's the best piece of advice I think I can give you. Shell, what would you leave the audience with today?
Oh, it probably would be build your capabilities, and not just for generative AI in a silo. This is for around analytics, data science, and machine learning broadly. They're all interconnected. They're all part of the same technology family. Your solutions that you're going to be creating are ultimately going to leverage components from all of them. It might look like a Gen AI application, but in actuality, it's almost invariably more efficient, cheaper, effective to go in and leverage it in tandem with more traditional technologies. And so what do those capabilities look like? It's people, process, and technology. It is investing in your people, investing in your processes, and extending what processes that you have around things like data governance to the ML and AI lifecycle. So model training, model operationalization, monitoring, etc., and the governance that you need around that. And on the platform side of things, going in and investing in platforms that can go in and span that life cycle, that can enable you to go from development through to deployment and iterate around this and deliver value in stages and trigger those virtuous cycles. You need all of those. And so I think most organizations have been on that journey. They should view this as the reason to go in and accelerate that and continue this, versus thinking misguidedly that there is now some sort of other path, or there's some sort of other stack that they need to build, or other organization or other thing to go after. Now, this is very much complementary to what you've already been developing, not a substitute for it.
Great advice. This has been an excellent conversation. And Michelle, it was great to chat with you about this. Thanks for joining me and having me here. And I enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise, Sean, thank you so much for your time, and thank you very much for all of your hard work in creating this research. I think we all owe you a huge debt to putting actual hard numbers behind so many things that are largely hearsay and anecdotes.
The numbers and the data drive the point of view, that's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sean. Sean, for folks who want to follow your research and get in touch with you, is there a best way to do that?
The best way is I love using LinkedIn. I publish findings and pieces of my content on LinkedIn on a regular basis. I welcome anybody reaching out to connect. And if you're interested in engaging even more so, I'm at srogers@barc.com.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Data Science Leaders from Domino Data Lab. If you found our discussion insightful, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. Your support helps us deliver cutting-edge content and keep the data science community informed and inspired. We appreciate every review. Until next time.